For almost a decade, he was the most wanted man on the entire planet. He was a ghost, a phantom, who taunted the world's most powerful intelligence agencies. This is the story of the painstaking, often frustrating, but ultimately successful hunt for Osama bin Laden.
So just imagine this for a second. It's October 2004, just 4 days before the US presidential election, and this tape just appears. It's Osama bin Laden, and he looks healthy, confident, and he's speaking directly to the American people. The sheer audacity of it is just staggering. It was this painful reminder that 3 whole years after 9/11, the man responsible for it all was safe enough somewhere to film and release a video like this.
And for the special CIA unit whose entire job was to find him, that was the agonizing reality. By 2004, pretty much every single lead had gone completely cold. The biggest manhunt in history had basically ground to a halt.
Now, this feeling of frustration had been building for years. See, the CIA thought they were so close back in December 2001. They had al-Qaeda fighters cornered in the caves of Tora Bora. But somehow, bin Laden just slipped away. And after that, years of silence, a total intelligence blackout, until that 2004 tape popped up proving he was still out there, pulling the strings from the shadows.
With no direct trail to bin Laden, the CIA had to completely change its strategy. If they couldn't find the man, they decided they would map his entire world, his support system, his command structure, his lines of communication. The whole idea was to build this cage of intelligence around him, one painful piece at a time.
And those pieces started coming from interrogations of key al-Qaeda captives. You had Mohammed al-Qahtani, the guy they suspected was the 20th hijacker. You had Abu Zubaydah, who identified Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, or KSM, as the mastermind. And then KSM himself filled in even more of the gaps after he was captured. But here's the really wild part. Even though these guys were painting a clearer picture of al-Qaeda's structure, they offered absolutely nothing on where bin Laden was now.
But all those tapes proved one absolutely crucial thing. Bin Laden was communicating. He wasn't using phones, he wasn't on the internet, which could only mean one thing. He had to be using people. And right there, that led to a brand new focus. Find the couriers. They were his one and only lifeline to the outside world.
And then, in mid-January 2004, they finally got their first real break. And it didn't come from some high-level commander. Nope, it came from a man named Hassan Gul, who had been arrested by Kurdish forces.
During his interrogation, Gul dropped a name, Abu Ahmed al-Kuwati. And he claimed this man wasn't just any courier. He was bin Laden's personal courier, someone who was deeply, deeply trusted in the inner circle. After years and years of dead ends, the CIA finally had a real name to chase.
Well, there was just one problem. Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti isn't a real name. It's an alias, basically meaning the father of Ahmed from Kuwait. So while the name was a vital clue, the man himself, he was still a complete ghost.
And to make things even harder, when investigators went and questioned high-level guys like KSM about the Kuwaiti, they all told the exact same story. Oh, him? He's a nobody. Retired. He's been gone from the organization for years. It was clearly a coordinated effort to throw them off the trail.
But this little act of deception completely backfired. To the CIA analysts, the fact that all these top al-Qaeda leaders were trying so hard to downplay this one guy's importance, well, it signaled the exact opposite. This so-called nobody was obviously somebody incredibly important. And just like that, the courier became their #1 priority.
Now, we should mention that some of this information came from detainees who were subjected to what were called enhanced interrogation techniques. These methods were and still are highly controversial. It's important to note that a 2014 Senate Intelligence Committee report, which looked into these interrogations, later concluded that these techniques were not effective and did not, in fact, produce the critical intelligence that ultimately led to finding bin Laden.
So, with investigators stuck once again, the next breakthrough wasn't going to come from an interrogation room. It would come years later from the world of international intelligence sharing.
In 2007, a partner intelligence service finally provided the real name of the Kuwaiti. He was Ibrahim Saeed Ahmed, a Pakistani man whose family had once lived in Kuwait. The alias finally had a real identity. But even though they had his name, it would still take 3 more years to actually find him. The real breakthrough finally came in 2010. That's the year the courier, Ibrahim Saeed Ahmed, slipped up. He and his brother changed how they used their cell phones. Just a small shift in their routine, but it was enough to make them vulnerable to electronic surveillance for the very first time.
And this is basically how that final chase went down.
The NSA intercepted calls on numbers linked to the courier's family. They identified one man whose profile fit perfectly. They even noted he was extremely cautious. Geolocation then placed one of his calls near Peshawar, Pakistan. And finally, in August of 2010, a Pakistani CIA agent on the ground spotted his vehicle and started to follow.
The agent followed the courier all the way home, but it wasn't a cave. It wasn't some remote hideout in the mountains. The trail ended at a massive 3-story compound right in the middle of a city called Abbottabad. This was not what anyone was expecting.
And the more they looked at this place, the more suspicious it got. I mean, it had these enormous 18-foot walls topped with barbed wire. It had no phone line and no internet connection, which is unheard of for a property that size. And get this, the residents burned all their own trash instead of having it collected. Every single detail just screamed that this place was built to hide someone really, really important.
And this is what led the CIA analysts to a stunning realization. Their whole theory, their entire strategy, was to follow the courier until he led them to bin Laden. But looking at this fortress, they started asking a totally new question. What if they were already there? What if the courier wasn't just visiting bin Laden? What if he was living with him?
And in that moment, the whole logic just flipped. The compound wasn't a stop on the way. It was the destination. The intelligence hunt, a mission that had consumed the CIA for nearly 10 years, had finally come to an end. Bin Laden had been located, and the military operation to get him was about to begin.